They said the war tunnel had been sealed off for decades, untouched since the conflict ended. Hidden beneath layers of overgrowth and rusted metal, the entrance was marked by heavy bolted doors and faded warnings carved directly into the stone. Local legends warned against going near it. Some said the place was cursed, others whispered about strange disappearances. But that only made it more tempting. When I took the job with the Historical Society to map the abandoned mine tunnels, I expected dust, darkness, and maybe some old war relics. What I didn't expect was to be completely cut off, no cell signal, no way out if something went wrong. The first day was uneventful, slow steps and quiet corridors deep underground. But on the second night, after everyone else had left and the camp was silent, I stayed behind to finish some notes. That's when I heard it, a soft, ragged breathing echoing through the cold tunnel walls. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, or maybe the wind moving through cracks in the stone. But it wasn't. It was deliberate, slow, close. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. The darkness felt alive, pressing in on me, heavier than the stale air. Every instinct screamed to run, but my body stayed frozen, ears straining for any other sound. The breathing grew louder, mixing with faint scraping noises, like something dragging itself across the dirt floor deeper in the tunnel. I flicked on my flashlight, the beam trembling as I pointed it toward the darkness. But all I saw were empty shadows swallowing the light. Something was down there, something that shouldn't be alive after all these years, and it was watching, waiting. I haven't told anyone this before. It's been eating away at me, twisting itself tighter in my mind every day since it happened. I guess part of me hoped that if I kept it to myself, it would just fade away, like a bad dream you forget by morning. But that's not how this works. Some things don't fade. Some things stay with you, lurking in the corners of your vision, whispering when the world is silent. That's why I'm talking to you now. I need someone to listen. Not just because I want to share what happened, but because I don't think anyone else would believe me. And I'm terrified of being alone with this. You seem like someone who's seen strange things too. Or maybe you've felt it. That creeping dread when you're out in the woods, far from civilization. And the silence isn't peaceful, it's wrong. Like the forest itself is holding its breath. Maybe you've experienced those nights where the noises don't match what you see, where the shadows move just a little too deliberately, and you know you're not alone, even if you can't see what's there. That's what I'm talking about. That kind of creeping presence that doesn't let you sleep. No matter how exhausted you are. It started when I took the job mapping that old abandoned mine. The place was buried deep in the mountains. Number cell service, no neighbors for miles, just trees and silence so thick it pressed against your skin. Exactly what I thought I needed at the time. A break from the noise of the city, a chance to clear my head. But it didn't work out that way. Instead, what I found was something else entirely. The mine wasn't just abandoned. It was sealed shut, like someone had tried to lock whatever was inside away from the world. The locals talked about it, of course whispers in the small town near the site. They called the tunnels cursed, said strange things happened to anyone who went in. I didn't believe it. I thought it was just superstition, folklore. But there were subtle, barely spoken warnings. I remember the way the old men at the diner looked at us when we mentioned the mine. Their eyes narrowing, voices dropping. "Don't go down there," they said. "Not unless you want to disappear." We were sent down anyway, a crew made up mostly of ex-cons, people no one else would hire. The company needed the tunnels mapped, and we were the cheapest option. I was just the guy with the map, the guy who followed orders. But from the moment we pried open that sealed door, something felt wrong. The air inside was thick and cold, smelling of damp earth and something older, something rotten and forgotten. Our lights barely cut through the darkness, and every step echoed down endless corridors. The silence was so complete, it was deafening. Then came the noises. Soft at first, faint knocks, like something tapping from within the walls. Then whispers, low and indistinct, slipping into my dreams when I tried to sleep. The kind of sounds that feel like a warning you can't quite understand until it's too late. There were moments I swear the shadows moved with intent, shifting just beyond the beam of my flashlight. Doors we locked would later be found open, creaking in the stale air. Furniture we hadn't moved would be shifted just slightly, as if unseen hands were rearranging the space. I tried to shrug it off, to tell myself it was nerves, or the quirks of an old place. But deep down, I knew it was something else. Sleepless nights followed. Every time I closed my eyes, the tunnel came back. The feeling of being watched, of something ancient and patient lying just beneath the surface. The kind of presence that doesn't want to be found, but won't let you go once it knows you're there. It's like the tunnels breathed around me, alive with memories and darkness, and I was trapped inside their story. I know you might think this sounds insane. Maybe it's just stress or some trick my mind is playing, but I promise you, it's real. And I need you to believe me, because what I found down there wasn't just echoes of the past. Something is still alive in those tunnels, still waiting. Whatever it is, it's watching, and it doesn't want company. So please, promise me one thing. Don't try to find it. Don't follow the path that leads to that sealed door, no matter how curious you get. There are places in this world that should stay locked away, stories better left untold. Because once you go in, you don't come out the same if you come out at all. I'm telling you this because the silence has become too loud, and the weight of this secret is crushing me. I can't keep this to myself any longer. If you ever find yourself in a place with no signal, surrounded by trees that seem to watch, and a quiet so thick it's suffocating, remember what I said. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Some tunnels are meant to stay sealed. And if you hear a whisper in the dark, don't follow it. Just walk away. Because whatever is down there, it's waiting, and it doesn't want you to leave. When I first arrived at the cabin, I thought I'd found the perfect place to escape everything. It sat deep in the woods, miles from the nearest town, surrounded by thick pine trees that blocked out the sun most of the day. The road to get there was barely more than a dirt track, winding through the forest like some forgotten path. Even driving up, I felt the silence pressing down on me. Not the peaceful kind of quiet you want on a retreat, but a heavy, watchful silence that seemed to listen as much as it smothered. The cabin itself looked like something out of another time. Weathered gray wood that had faded and cracked, windows dark and empty, like eyes that had long stopped seeing. The roof sagged slightly, and the porch creaked underfoot with every step. It was isolated in the truest sense. No neighbors for miles, no cell service, no lights, except the ones I brought with me. Exactly what I thought I needed. But there was something off about it. Something subtle, but unsettling. The kind of feeling you get when you catch a glimpse of movement out of the corner of your eye, but turn and see nothing. The kind of heaviness in the air that doesn't belong to any storm. On my first night, I noticed the clocks inside the cabin didn't work. One stopped at 3:17 exactly, while the other refused to tick at all. The old grandfather clock in the corner was silent. I shrugged it off at first. Maybe they just ran out of batteries, or had been broken for years. But it felt more deliberate, like time itself paused around this place. And the birds outside, they were nowhere to be heard. Usually, even in deep woods, there's a morning chorus, a flutter of wings. Here, there was only silence. At times, I caught my reflection in the window glass and thought I saw something moving behind me. But when I turned, the room was always empty. Locals had warned me about the area, not directly, but through stories half whispered in the nearby town's diner or the gas station where I stopped for supplies. Old-timers spoke in hushed tones about the river wives. Strange women said to haunt the river that cut through the forest. They said you shouldn't speak to them, that if you did, you'd be lost forever. No one gave clear explanations. The stories were half myths, half warnings, like an unspoken rule no one wanted to break. At night, I felt those warnings in every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig just beyond sight. It was like the forest itself was watching, waiting. Sometimes, I'd hear faint voices carried on the wind, soft singing, a melody that didn't belong to any human I'd ever known. But when I went outside to find the source, there was only the empty woods, cold and still. The cabin's architecture added to the unease. It was old, built decades ago, with thick wooden beams that groaned as the wind pushed through the trees. The walls seemed to breathe in the darkness, shadows pooling in corners like liquid. Every night, the floorboards creaked as if someone was walking just out of sight. The fireplace never stayed lit for long, the flames flickering weakly, no matter how much wood I stacked on. One night, I saw a shadow pass behind the doorway, tall, elongated, but when I called out, the silence swallowed my voice. The air would sometimes turn icy cold in certain rooms, even though the rest of the cabin stayed warm. I found strange scratches etched into the wooden walls behind the couch lines, too deliberate to be random, but no meaning I could decipher. One evening, while washing dishes, I caught movement in the reflection of the window behind me. A figure stood in the forest, just beyond the tree line. Not a person I recognized, but something with a vague, shifting shape, like it was partly made of shadow and mist. When I blinked, it vanished. I told myself it was just fatigue playing tricks on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was watching me, waiting. At times the silence felt oppressive, like it had weight. The birds would fall silent for hours, the wind would stop altogether, and all I could hear was the distant, slow drip of water somewhere in the woods. The moonlight barely penetrated the dense canopy, and when the fog rolled in at night, it wrapped the cabin in a thick, clammy blanket. It felt like stepping into another world, one where time moved differently and reality bent around the edges. Even the animals behaved strangely. Deer would appear at the edge of the clearing, standing perfectly still and staring for minutes, eyes reflecting an unnatural light, before disappearing silently into the woods. Once I heard the hoot of an owl nearby, but when I turned to look, it was just a hollow, empty tree. No owl in sight. The forest seemed alive, but not in the way I expected. It was as if something ancient lurked beneath the soil, watching through every leaf and shadow. Locals told me there had been disappearances around these woods, hunters and hikers who never came back. Their stories quickly buried under rumors and silence. They said the river was cursed, that those who listened to the river wives were drawn into the water, lost to something below. I didn't believe them at first, but every night in that cabin, every unexplained noise, every shadow that moved just a little too deliberately, made me question how much I really knew about this place. It was a slow build, a creeping sense that the cabin was more than just old wood and broken clocks, that the silence wasn't empty, but full of watching eyes and waiting things. I felt like I was intruding on a secret, like the forest itself wanted to remind me I was not welcome. The longer I stayed, the harder it became to tell what was real and what was part of the haunting. And then there was the river that flowed just beyond the trees, dark and cold and endless. At night, its surface shimmered like glass, but sometimes I thought I saw faces, pale, blurred faces just beneath the water, watching. I was told never to speak to the river wives. I wish I'd listened. The night started quietly enough, just the usual creaks and groans you expect from an old cabin nestled deep in the woods. But soon, the silence began to break in ways I couldn't ignore. It started with the knocking. Not a polite, rhythmic knock, like someone waiting to be let in, but sharp, erratic taps, coming from the walls themselves, or maybe the window pane. The first time it happened, I was sitting alone in the living room, the only light the flickering glow from the fireplace. The knocking came out of nowhere, soft at first, like a hesitant tap on the glass. I thought maybe an animal had bumped into the window, But when I looked outside, there was nothing. Just the endless stretch of dark trees, unmoving and silent. I tried to brush it off, but the knocking didn't stop. Night after night, it grew louder, more urgent, as if something was trying to get through the thin wood. Sometimes it came in bursts of rapid-fire knocks that echoed through the cabin and set my nerves on edge. Other times, it was slow, deliberate, counting out a rhythm I couldn't decipher. I found myself freezing in place whenever I heard it, my heart pounding, eyes darting to every shadow. The knocking never came during the day, only after the sun slipped below the horizon. Then came the doors. Every door in the cabin had a sturdy lock, but those locks didn't seem to mean anything here. I'd check before bed, making sure each door was latched tight, sometimes double-checking just to be sure. But in the middle of the night, I'd wake to the unmistakable sound of a door creaking open, slowly and deliberately. It was always the door to the back porch, the one facing the forest. Sometimes, I'd get up and slam it shut, locking it again, but the next time I woke, it would be open once more. I never saw anyone. No footprints in the snow, no rustle of leaves to mark a presence, just the open door, letting in a cold draft that sent chills down my spine. Sleep became impossible. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were haunted by whispers. At first, they were just murmurs, unintelligible and distant, like voices carried on the wind. But gradually, the whispers grew clearer, repeating phrases that sounded eerily familiar. They spoke of warnings: do not speak to the river wives. Leave before it's too late. They are watching. The strangest part was how those whispers matched what I would hear later that night in the cabin itself. A faint, soft voice would call out from the darkness, echoing the very same words from my dreams. It was as if the boundary between sleep and waking was dissolving, and something was reaching through to me, blurring the lines. One night, I awoke to the sound of furniture shifting. The heavy armchair in the corner of the room had been moved. I was sure it was against the wall the night before, but now it sat angled toward the fireplace, as if someone had been sitting there, watching. The wooden floorboards groaned under the weight, but no footprints or signs of anyone were anywhere to be found. It wasn't just the chair. Small objects would appear in different places. A book left on the table would be found on the floor the next morning, a candle extinguished, despite having been lit only moments before. The more these things happened, the more I felt trapped in the cabin's grip. The forest outside seemed to close in tighter with every passing night. Shadows stretching closer to the windows, twisting and crawling in shapes that defied logic. I caught myself staring into the woods, trying to spot whatever was causing the noises, but all I saw was darkness. The air turned thick and cold, and every breath felt like inhaling frost. The knocking, the doors, the whispers, the moved furniture, they became a nightly routine I couldn't escape. It wasn't just random noises or tricks of the mind. The disturbances had a pattern, a sinister purpose. It felt like the cabin was alive in some way, testing me, warning me, or maybe even tormenting me. One night, after hours of the knocking, I gathered enough courage to whisper back. I pressed my ear to the cold wall, where the taps were loudest, and whispered, "What do you want?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, just as I was about to pull away, the knocking answered 3 sharp knocks, then a long pause, then 2 more. It was like a code, a message I couldn't understand but knew was meant for me. I began to notice other strange things too. The flickering lights inside the cabin would dim and brighten without reason. Sometimes the fireplace would spark and die out suddenly, leaving the room plunged into darkness. The temperature would drop sharply in certain spots, especially near the back door that always opened itself. It felt like the cabin was breathing, pulsing with a presence just out of sight. The dreams grew more vivid, and I started waking in cold sweats. The whispers weren't just warnings anymore. They were pleas, cries for help, begging me to leave. I couldn't tell if they were from the river wives the locals spoke of, or something worse lurking beneath the surface. During the day, I tried to reassure myself. The forest was just quiet because it was remote. The knocking was probably animals, or the wind. Doors sometimes shift open with old locks. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The cabin, the woods, the air, they all carried a weight, a presence that was growing stronger. Sometimes, I caught glimpses of movement at the edges of my vision, figures watching from the tree line, flickers of pale faces reflected in windows, shadows slipping through the dark. But whenever I turned to face them, they vanished like smoke. Each night, the cabin's grip tightened. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by restless watchfulness, and endless waiting for what would come next. The knocking continued, the doors opened and closed, whispers filled the dark, and the furniture silently rearranged itself. Always just out of reach, always just out of sight. I realized then that whatever was inside the cabin, or waiting, just beyond the walls, was not going to let me go easily, and maybe it never meant to. The night I found the journal beneath the floorboards, I swear, the cabin held its breath. I'd been pacing the creaking wooden floor, desperate to make sense of the relentless disturbances that plagued me. Every knocking, every creak, every whisper seemed to build toward something I wasn't ready for, but couldn't escape. The floorboard near the hearth had always looked slightly warped, as if it didn't quite belong. The thought nagged at me for days, until, finally, I mustered the courage to pry it open with a crowbar I found in the shed. Beneath the worn wood, wrapped in a thin, brittle cloth, lay a small, leather-bound journal. The leather was cracked and faded, its edges frayed by time, but the pages inside were surprisingly well preserved. The handwriting was cramped and hurried, as if whoever had written it was racing against some unseen deadline. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the dim glow of my flashlight illuminating the jagged script. The journal belonged to someone named Elijah Carter, a miner who had worked in this very area decades ago. His entries started, innocuously enough, descriptions of daily labor and hopes of striking rich veins of ore. But as the pages turned, the tone shifted. Elijah wrote about strange sounds echoing through the tunnels, unnatural cold spots that no lamp could penetrate, and shadows that moved just beyond the flicker of his lantern. He mentioned the river wives, a name I'd heard whispered in town, describing them as ethereal figures who lured miners deeper into the dark, never to return. Elijah's entries grew more frantic. He spoke of a sealed tunnel, one that had been deliberately closed off by the mining company after a series of mysterious disappearances. According to him, the tunnel led not just underground, but into something else entirely. A place where the rules of reality bent and twisted. He wrote of a presence that watched from the shadows, ancient and patient, waiting for the living to trespass. The final entries were almost illegible, penned in trembling ink. Elijah warned anyone who found the journal to never open the sealed tunnel, to heed the silence and the warnings carved into the walls above. He wrote about carvings etched into the rock, symbols that no one could explain, markings that pulsed with a dark energy. His last words were a desperate plea. The eyes watch from the dark. They hunger. They never sleep. I knew I had to see these carvings for myself. The next day, armed with the journal and a flashlight, I returned to the mine entrance that had long been sealed by heavy wooden beams and rusted chains. Using an old crowbar and brute force, I pried the boards loose and slipped inside. The stale air, thick with dust and decay. The tunnel beyond was narrow and dark, the silence oppressive. Every step echoed unnaturally, as if the very walls were listening. Deeper into the tunnel, I found the walls covered with strange carvings, angular symbols and twisted shapes that seemed to writhe in the flashlight's beam. The air here was icy cold, and the shadows clung to the walls like living things. I felt eyes on me, heavy and unblinking, watching from the darkness beyond the light's reach. That's when I heard it, a faint breathing, slow and deliberate, coming from somewhere deeper in the mine. My heart hammered in my chest as the hairs on my neck stood on end. The breathing grew louder, almost synchronized with my own panicked breaths. Something ancient was awake. Suddenly, the temperature dropped so sharply I could see my breath misting in the beam. A low moan echoed from the far end, a sound that was part wind, part lament, part something utterly alien. My flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into complete darkness. Panic rose in my throat, but a strange calm overtook me. In the pitch black, I sensed a presence moving toward me, something vast and formless, yet filled with purpose. A voice whispered, not in words, but in feeling, a cold, ancient sorrow and hunger that seeped into my bones. The journal hadn't lied. We weren't the first to trespass, and we certainly wouldn't be the last. The river wives weren't myths. They were guardians, or perhaps prisoners themselves, bound to the mine's dark heart. The carvings were warnings etched in desperation, a plea for anyone who dared enter to turn back. I stumbled back toward the entrance, the oppressive presence trailing close behind, whispering promises of oblivion and silence. The sealed tunnel was a gateway, a barrier between our world and something else entirely. Something hungry, something ancient, something that watched with eyes that never blink. When I finally burst into the fresh air outside, the sunlight felt like a balm on my raw nerves. But even now, I know that what we unleashed or disturbed that day is still waiting, still watching. The mine isn't empty. It never was. And the journal, I brought it with me, a grim reminder of the secrets buried beneath the earth. Sometimes, late at night, I can still hear the faint knocking of something against the tunnel walls. A warning or a call, I'm not sure which. I haven't told anyone else about what I found down there. Most would call me crazy, but if you ever come across a sealed tunnel in the woods, if you hear whispers or knocking with no source, please don't follow where curiosity leads. Some doors are meant to stay closed. I thought leaving would be simple, just retracing my steps back through the mine, out into the sunlight, and away from the nightmare I'd uncovered. But as soon as I turned from the carvings and started back down the tunnel, something felt off. The air thickened, the darkness seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Each step I took echoed in ways that didn't match the tunnel's narrow walls. The familiar path I thought I knew began to warp and shift beneath my feet, like the ground itself was rearranging to trap me inside. I paused, trying to steady my breathing, but the silence around me wasn't empty anymore. It hummed with a low vibration, subtle at first, then rising into a drone that filled my head and blurred the edges of my vision. The walls seemed to bend inward, closing in, narrowing the tunnel like the throat of some vast beast. No matter how fast I moved, I couldn't find the exit. The sealed door I'd forced open earlier was nowhere to be seen. I reached out to touch the wall, and it felt soft like bark on a living tree pulsing faintly under my fingers. The air smelled damp and earthy, but also metallic, like blood. A whisper floated just beyond hearing, so soft I wasn't sure if it was real or just my mind unraveling. Then the whisper grew louder, taking shape in the form of a voice, fragmented, broken, calling my name, luring me deeper. The forest outside wasn't just physical. It was something else, a place where time folded over itself and space became meaningless. The mine wasn't just underground. It was a gateway to something older, a place outside the rules I'd lived by. I realized with a sinking feeling that I was caught in its pull, trapped between worlds that weren't meant to overlap. Panic threatened to overtake me, but somewhere beneath the fear, a numb calm spread through my limbs. It was like the presence in the mine was waiting, watching, patient beyond comprehension. The air shimmered ahead, and through that haze, I caught glimpses of faces pale, gaunt, and hollow-eyed, pressed against invisible walls, watching. They weren't hostile yet, just waiting. As I stumbled forward, the walls of the tunnel began to blur and dissolve, revealing a vast, shadowy forest that stretched endlessly beneath a dark sky. The trees here were twisted and gnarled, their branches clawing at the mist. Among them, pale shapes moved, silhouettes of those lost long ago, caught forever in the same eternal trap. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The ground beneath me shifted and pulsed, the soil alive with something ancient and hungry. Suddenly, the earth opened beneath my feet, and I fell, falling through cold, suffocating darkness that smelled of rot and forgotten things. When I landed, I was no longer in the mine or the forest. I was somewhere between a place where shadows breathed and whispers bled into the silence. The faces from the forest were closer now, their empty eyes boring into mine. They reached for me with hands like brittle branches, pulling me toward a cold embrace. I fought, clawing at the darkness, but it was useless. The presence enveloped me, a crushing weight that pressed against my mind and soul. I felt myself slipping, becoming less human with every heartbeat. The faces smiled not kindly, but with the cruel satisfaction of a trap sprung at that moment. I understood what Elijah meant in his journal. The mine, the tunnel, the river wives were part of something eternal, a cycle of hunger and captivity that devoured those who dared to enter. I wasn't just trapped, I was being consumed, folded into the ancient darkness that lurked beneath the earth. And yet, even as the shadows closed around me, a small part of my mind remained. I was still aware enough to tell this story to warn anyone who might listen. But the line between my voice and the whispers is thin now. Some nights, I feel myself slipping further, my thoughts no longer my own. If you ever find yourself near that sealed mine, remember this: some places are better left alone. Curiosity is a dangerous thing when faced with something that doesn't belong in this world. The mind changes those who enter. It twists time and space until you lose yourself. I tried to escape, but there was no escape. The forest, the tunnel, the presence, they are one and the same. An endless labyrinth that traps the soul. Or maybe I didn't escape at all. Maybe I've become part of it, another lost whisper in the dark, waiting for the next unwary soul to follow me down. So, if you hear knocking with no source, whispers and dreams that feel too real, or footsteps where there shouldn't be any run, don't look back, and whatever you do, don't try to find the sealed tunnel, because once it's found, it never lets go. I haven't been able to sleep since. Not a full, peaceful sleep. Not the kind that lets you forget everything for a few hours and just breathe. Instead, every night is filled with shadows and sounds that shouldn't exist. It's like the darkness itself is alive, creeping into my room, curling around my mind like a cold, heavy fog. Sometimes, I hear the faintest echo of knocking, just beyond the walls, soft and deliberate, like someone trying to get in, or maybe trying to warn me. It's enough to keep me awake, heart pounding, waiting for something I can't see, but feel deep in my bones. The dreams haven't stopped either. They're not like normal dreams. They're too vivid, too real. I find myself walking those tunnels again, hearing whispers that aren't quite voices, but carry the weight of centuries. Sometimes, the whispers call my name. Other times, they speak in a language I don't understand, but somehow know is older than anything on this earth. I wake up drenched in sweat, the cold seeping into my skin, the taste of dust and decay lingering in my mouth. It's not just in my dreams though. I still feel it in the silence of my own home, the unexplained presence that lingers like a shadow just out of sight. A cold draft brushes past when there's no wind. Furniture seems subtly shifted, objects just slightly out of place, like something unseen is moving through my life, watching, waiting. I've tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it's just my mind playing tricks after everything I've been through. But the truth is, I don't think it ever left. That place, the sealed mine, the tunnels beneath the earth, whatever is in there, it followed me home. I want to warn you, if you ever find yourself near that abandoned mine, don't go looking for it. The curiosity that draws people in is a trap, a snare that tightens with every step you take inside. You won't find treasure or secrets worth keeping. You'll only find the hunger of something ancient, something that doesn't care about human lives or fears. The earth itself seems to breathe with it, alive in a way that's impossible to explain. If you come across the sealed entrance, don't be tempted to open it. Don't listen to the rumors or local legends trying to pull you closer. Trust me when I say this, some things are better left buried, hidden in the dark where they can't touch us. Because once you step inside, you're never really alone, and you never truly leave. I've tried to move on, tried to live a normal life, but the weight of that place is always with me. It's in the way. My hands shake at night, in the sudden cold sweats that wake me from sleep, in the emptiness I feel when I'm alone. Friends and family notice the change in the way I look past them as if seeing something else. The silence that falls over me when they ask what happened, but I can't tell them. How do you explain something that sounds insane? How do you make people understand that something old and terrible is waiting beneath the ground, just beyond reach? Sometimes I wonder if I'm already part of it. By opening that tunnel, by stepping inside, I let something into my soul. Maybe that's why I can still hear the whispers, the faint knocking, the slow breathing in the silence. Maybe I'm not just haunted by memories, but by the presence itself, an echo of the mind's dark heart living inside me. I've thought about going back, about trying to face it again and end whatever it is for good. But fear isn't the only thing holding me back. It's knowing that the mind doesn't just take people. It changes them, consumes them, and turns them into something unrecognizable. And if I go back, there's no guarantee I'll come out the same, or come out at all. So, I live in this limbo, caught between the normal world and the shadows of that forgotten place. I tell this story, not because I want to scare you, but because I need someone to understand. Someone who won't dismiss what happened as madness or imagination, because it's real. It's always been real, and it's still out there, waiting. If you ever stumble across that sealed tunnel, burn it. Don't stay. Don't even think about exploring what's inside. Whatever you do, walk away and never look back, because the darkness beneath the earth is patient and hungry, and it remembers everyone who dares to disturb it. And I'm still here, haunted, sleepless, changed forever. Have you ever felt like something was watching you when you were supposed to be completely alone? Maybe you heard footsteps echoing down an empty hallway, or whispers just out of reach so faint you weren't sure if they were real or just in your head. I want you to think about those moments, the ones you brushed off or never told anyone about. Because those experiences, they're real. And maybe, just maybe, you know what it feels like to be followed by something unseen. I read every story you share, every comment, every confession. It's like we're connected through the darkness we've faced. I'm not just telling you my story to scare you. I want you to share yours too. You never know who might be listening, who might need to hear that they're not alone in this. So please, comment below. Tell me about the strange noises you've heard, the shadows you couldn't explain, the nights you couldn't sleep because of the unexplained presence, lurking just beyond your sight. But a word of warning, if you're going to dive into these stories, don't do it alone. The things we talk about here aren't just fiction. They're warnings, and sometimes, curiosity is dangerous. So when you listen to the next story, make sure someone else is with you. Don't let the silence swallow you up. Stay safe out there, and remember, you're not alone in the dark. I'll be here, reading, listening, waiting for your stories. Just don't listen to the next story alone.